Government leaders and international organizations are gathering in Switzerland to start drawing up plans for Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction. The cost of rebuilding is expected to run into hundreds of billions of dollars. The Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal will attend the meeting in the lakeside city of Lugano. Volodymyr Zelensky will address the conference via video link. With the fighting raging in eastern Ukraine, he has already warned that many towns will need rebuilding from scratch. But this is not a donor conference. The aim is to highlight the needs and draft a provisional roadmap for recovery. At the same time, tackling corruption, the original pre-war priority for this conference, will also be addressed. Now, for more on Ukraine, we can now cross live to London and join our chief correspondent, John Cookson. John, I want to say thank you very much for joining us here on Newsday. Now, let's start it off with what's the significance of the fall of Lysychansk?
Hi, guys. Great to be on Newsday. Well, it's significance of both sides, both the Russians and the Ukrainians. For the Russians, it's a major step forward in securing the whole of the Luhansk region. President Putin been crowing about that, and as you mentioned earlier, he sent his congratulations to Russian troops. He's also been dishing out medals to various generals following the taking of Lysychansk, the last major city in that region, a city of 100,000 people. It's a major loss for the Ukrainians, heavy coal mine, industrial area, and the Ukrainians performed what was called a tactical a removal of troops from the city as it was about to fall. And I think in the great scheme of things, that was a good thing to do when you look at how cities like Mariupol and Severodonetsk were pounded almost to a pulp by 24-hour bombing and shelling by Russian forces. At least this town of Lysychansk has been saved, whatever its future is in Russian hands. And Zelensky saying earlier today that he pledges to retake that city along with others. I think that's a long-term aim, and it's something the Ukrainian people would like to hear, but whether that's being very realistic or not is hard to say. The Russian artillery and advance will now continue and to mop up just bits of resistance, Ukrainian resistance in the region. But for all intents and purposes, the Russians have now taken the Luhansk region.
And John, where do you expect the Russians to focus on next?
Well, they'll look to take Donetsk, and they'll focus on the cities of Bakhmut and Slovyansk. Already, these cities are receiving the 24-hour bombing treatment from the Russians. It must be absolutely terrifying for the people on the ground. And what we're now settling down to is a long, hot summer of fighting in the region through July and August, with heavy losses on both sides. We don't know how many Russian soldiers have lost their lives. The Ukrainians put it at 32,000 so far. And certainly the Ukrainians are admitting to losing 100 to 200 men every day. And, it's an absolute tragedy for the people of Ukraine and for everyone involved in the conflict. And this plodding advance, as it were, to retake the Donbas region will continue through the summer, this long, grinding war where Russian forces target an area, they target a town, they target a city, and then just bomb it to pieces. That's the modus operandi. And also, not only in this region, you mentioned Kharkiv in the east, that's also under attack. Odessa was under attack, and Odessa is hundreds and hundreds of miles west of the region that we're talking about now. It's an area I know well. It was bombed when I was there, so that was in March. So the bombing of Odessa is sporadic and continuing. 19 dead on Friday, according to Zelensky. So it's a slow war of attrition, the front line being fluid all the time. The Russians left with about 800 kilometers of front line to defend, and that's quite a lot. At some point, they'll work themselves to exhaustion on both sides, the Ukrainians and the Russians, in which case, troops are going to have to come from somewhere else to reinforce what's already on the ground.
All right, with the fall of the Luhansk region, put more pressure on the West to supply more weapons to Ukraine. Talk to us about this.
Yeah, very much so. Now, we already know that the West, including countries like the UK, America, and Germany, have already pledged billions and billions of dollars worth of weapons, and they are getting to Ukraine at a slower pace than what the Ukrainians would want. But there's a problem for the West. The West is worried that Putin might, for example, start turning off the gas supplies to countries like Germany already under reduced supply. He might also, in retaliation, step up this blockade of food leaving the southern ports of Ukraine, which are desperately needed by the wider world. So the West is definitely under pressure, right? How much, to what extent they'll relent and give Ukraine far more weaponry is an open question, given those two background problems that I just talked about.
And there's a conference being held in Switzerland today looking at rebuilding Ukraine. What more could you tell us about that?
Yes, it's in Lugano. It was already in the diary long before Russia invaded Ukraine. It was to talk about corruption and how that can be tackled in Ukraine. So it was very much a Ukraine-focused conference, already in the pipeline. But since the invasion by Russian forces, it's suddenly become this focal point for what some people are calling a new Marshall Plan for Ukraine. The Marshall Plan, of course, was a $15 billion plan to reconstruct parts of Europe after the Second World War. This is on a much, much bigger scale. You mentioned in the intro there that billions would be pledged to rebuild Ukraine. But look, you just have to go to a city like Mariupol, which has been utterly destroyed. It's going to take trillions and trillions of dollars over many, many years to reconstruct some cities like that. For example, Severodonetsk as well. So billions, yeah, fine. But this is not about pledging money. This is about focusing on where the money has to be spent. How can Western powers help Ukraine rebuild itself? So it's not about pledging money, as I say, because Western governments don't have a lot of money to pledge at the moment, especially countries like the UK and Germany on the brink of recession. This is about just focusing on where and how Ukraine is going to be rebuilt.
All right, many thanks to you, John Cookson, our Chief Correspondent, for your time here on Newsday.